Welcome everyone, Quasini here with my review of the Omens of Destruction DLC for Total War Warhammer 3 Immortal Empires. Now I could have done an entire gameplay montage, but I did want to talk about the various races, the reworks, the new characters, the new units, so I want to show the campaign map. Let's start with Ogres, because Ogres were in a fairly miserable position as a race. So was Khorne, by the way, very one-dimensional, though it could work with Khorne. Unlike Ogres. Greenskins, pretty strong race. They did make some changes, so there are some things people will have to get used to compared to how Greenskins worked before. But we'll see. Greenskins in a good position pre-patch, in a good position post-patch. Let's talk about Ogres. So here's what has changed. We get a new research tree. It does feel a bit one-dimensional with regards to the research tree. Because basically, you want to get access to the gold standard and all the wonderful things over here as quickly as possible. So in pretty much every Ogre campaign, you're going to do the same thing over and over and over again. Which is go for big attents, so research Butcher Spices, research Big Migration, get big attents, probably get Camp Huddle pretty quickly, and then focus on this tree, and then this tree, Big Migration, get gold standard, Ogre Frank, Sky Titan Plateau, and that will be essentially your research tree for the entire campaign, because that's when it actually matters. It is a better research tree, don't get me wrong. At least you're not researching stuff that's useless, although there is certainly some stuff that is absolutely worthless, like 1 control -2 corruption, Lord Crew rank +2, pretty nice. But then it's like attrition caused by corruption reduced, okay, sure. When it's so easy for Ogres to enter in camp stance. Yeah, that's great. You do get a combination of very useful things with a combination of really useless things. And some things do require quite a bit of time. I think it would have been great to have some things in a research tree that would have required meat to do. Because you have a ton of meat. Maybe meat on your Legendary Lords, though how exactly you'd handle that. Maybe just gold, really. Because we are swimming in gold. Ogres are rich, boys and girls. So they went from being one of the most piss-poor factions in the game, in terms of finances, to a really, really strong economy. And not just in the sense that, oh, you get a lot of money post-battle. No, their actual economic structures do generate up to 400 income. They have, especially with Greases, they have a bunch of economic benefits. So Ogre economy is significantly better. Ogre camps. And one of the reasons is that Ogre camps no longer require any other resource except meat, and meat is far more plentiful, and you can transfer it from armies to camp. So you save a ton of money. Like, this is turn 19. This is, outside of Otter's on mods, this is an unmodded campaign as Goldfang. Now granted, Goldfang has a ton of meat available to him in his campaign, so that's the reason I got the tier 5 camp as quickly in this campaign. But mind you, you can get a ton of meat with Greases as well through some of his actions. Not quite as much, dependent on the contracts that you do get, but you can get a decent amount of meat. Maybe you wouldn't have a tier 5 camp at turn 19, but you'd certainly have it by turn 30, if you wanted to do so. One of the things I like about the camp change is beforehand, you wanted to get as many camps as possible, as quickly as possible, partly to have meat replenishment in a radius around them for your armies, because otherwise you'd enter a meat deficit. That's no longer an issue. And then on top of that, because you need to wait for surplus points, you needed them for income, well, you no longer need them for income. You no longer deal with surplus points. So what they've achieved with the camp changes is they've made it so that perhaps the original design intent of Ogres having limited settlements, limited camps, and being more nomadic actually works. And on top of that, you can build a camp like this, then pack it up, and restore it in 5 turns wherever you want. Now, maybe 5 turns is too long of cooldown. That's an inherent issue in Warhammer 3. A lot of the pace of the campaign is very fast, so 5 turns may be a bit much, but all the same, it is a great change in mechanics. Maybe there's some tweaking that's necessary with respect to it. You do get the ability of recruiting every Ogre hero at tier 2, including the new Bruisers. So every hero, be it Bruisers, Hunters, Firebellies, butchers are recruited at tier 2. We get new lores of magic with death and heavens. We can also recruit every ogre hero from minor settlements as well. So one of the problems with ogres was increasing hero capacity. Well, that is no longer an issue. In fact, it's easier to increase it's easier to increase hero capacity from minor settlements than it is in camps, because you need tier 4 settlements to increase fire belly capacity, as an example. So that is a really, really good change with regards to all of that. As for the new units, the new lord choice, the new hero choice, yeah, Bruiser's great. Paymaster, he's focusing on buffing your army as an alternative to the Ogre Tyrant skill line changes. Like, I've already gone over all the Ogre changes, but suffice to say, what they've done and what they've added in terms of units, pretty damn good. Like, I do appreciate it. Eshin Maneater is fun. Goldfang Maneaters, really good anti-infantry unit. Basically, these are Maneaters with dual weapons. So you had the Iron Fist version, you had the Great Weapon version, now you have the dual weapon version with the anti-infantry benefit. You can get Ledge Belchers at tier 3. That is freaking fantastic. So you get a better variety of heroes, better variety of units, better economy, a lot of things working in your favor. And I do absolutely appreciate all of these kind of changes for the ogres. Now, on top of all of that, what about Goldfang's campaign? Well, it certainly is a steamroll campaign, because you constantly have the ability, like, you are incentivized, very heavily incentivized, to do contracts very quickly. In fact, if you look at the victory conditions, you need to do 25 freaking contracts to achieve long campaign. Basically, this is the game saying, go out there, do contracts, finish them up quickly, move on to the next. This will give you a ton of money, ton of meat. It is a steamroll campaign. You can get camps to a higher level faster than others. You can go to various areas in the campaign faster than others. Like, how did I end up over here? I didn't use a cheat or anything like that, no. I got the contract with Miao Ying, because Cafe and Caravans go for the Empire, so I got a contract for her, teleported to her, then I had a contract option for Greasus. So I broke my contract, you can. I'm sure Miao Ying does not necessarily appreciate that aspect with regards to all of it. But broke the contract I had with Miao Ying, and accepted a Greasus one, teleported Greasus. If I had enough movement range, I would have even fought him this specific turn, and taken his entire empire. So, while I feel the theme of this DLC is certainly teleporting characters, because you have Skulltaker, you have Arbol, you have Goldfang. I do think the contract system is kind of half-baked. So in terms of the paid units, that's pretty solid. In terms of a great and entertaining campaign, kind of sketchy, I'm not gonna lie. So if we, yeah, let's say we make peace. So these contracts, you can get some other rewards, but for the most part, you're just gonna get meat and money, when you already have a ton of meat and money. So it kind of feels a bit redundant. I feel they could have done more. Like, if you're doing certain contracts for certain factions, you could get, like, units from that faction. You could get better and better diplomatic relations. Or if you're doing multiple contracts for another faction or contract chains, they could have done so much more. Instead, you have one-off contracts. And you have a lot of flexibility to just screw over people over. I don't know. I feel it's kind of lackluster. There is a lot of flexibility. There is there is the aspect of dynamic campaign experience. But when you're just giving me money and meat, both of which I already have in spades because of all the foes I deal with. Because when you accept a contract and you teleport to a faction, guess what? You teleport to a faction that's already engaged in a war with someone and you're fighting their enemies. That's going to give you a lot of meat because you're probably fighting legendary armies. Like over here, legendary lord armies. Over here, I teleported to Marienburg, fought Kemmler, then I took Marienburg. I made a ton of meat just from the fighting, let alone the thousands of meat that I got from completing Marienburg contract before turning my swords on them or my clubs on them. So that was one thing that I think is weak. Like, it's not bad. Like, I wish to stress out, whatever criticism I have with this DLC, it's not bad. As far as DLCs go, it is pretty great. Like, what they did for the Ogre is great, but I just feel like the mechanic that Goldfag has just kind of feels a bit redundant. Yeah, it's just free money and meat. Doing things that you would otherwise do. I feel they could have done more with it. Probably that's going to be the running theme of this review. It's good, but you could have done X, right? That would be my perspective. Also, the bounty system for Goldfag kind of feels redundant, right? It's just extra meat and extra money on top of the stuff you're already getting with contracts. So that's kind of the problem I have with it. You have a system in a campaign to give you meat and money when you're already getting a lot of meat and money because of the way the ogres were reworked. So if the contract system, if they had added the contract system, the mercenary contract system, for the way ogres previously, yeah, that would be freaking fantastic for pre-patch ogres. But post-patch ogres, they're freaking great in terms of economy and money. And just adding a lot of that, like, consider Oxyatl. I'll just use this comparison. Oxyatl has a bunch of objectives, but he gains money, to be sure. And that's one of the rewards. But the thing about Oxyatl, you get blessed units by doing his objectives in his campaign. You're incentivized to do his objectives because you get penalties if you don't. There is a downside if you don't actually do those objectives. And you don't pick and choose. You get a series of objectives, and if you ignore them, you get penalties. Not big penalties, but they're penalties. So one of the things that makes Oxyatl's campaign great is, yes, you have a dynamic system of a campaign, but you can't just pick and choose and blitz your way through everyone, getting tons of rewards. There are downsides in this campaign, regardless of the fact that you have a lot of climate viability, so do ogres, but Oxyatl has every climate in the game viable. But if you ignore it, you get things like chaos corruption, you get your enemies get stronger, you're missing out on those units. Here, you're just missing out on meat and money, so I don't know, it just doesn't feel like respecting your contracts and actually caring about like how well those factions are doing and all that doesn't feel that particularly great from my point of view. So I think it could have used a better system. I think in some ways, for all the issues Lizardmen have, Oxyatl does have a better system in his campaign. But the Ogre rework is great. The new units are good. Or at least they help out, flesh out the Ogre roster. And I do greatly appreciate the reworks for Scrag and Greases, who do get unique campaign mechanics. So all campaigns, all Ogre campaigns are far more interesting than they were before. But I don't necessarily feel Goldfag's unique mechanic, even though he's a great Legendary Lord, skill line, all that, I don't feel his unique campaign mechanic is that particularly well thought out. Next up, we have Khorne, Skulltaker, and Arbol the Undefeated. Arbol the Undefeated has a pretty great campaign, which is also based on the Oxyatl teleportation mechanic of dynamic objectives. Though he doesn't necessarily have the same penalties as Oxyatl, although if you lose a battle with Arbol's army, you do get punished quite severely for it. So there are some downsides to that, and you do have to strategize. Skulltaker, not quite so much. But let's talk about Khorne. The way Khorne was pre-patch was fairly one-dimensional, because due to the way recruitment worked, due to the way economy worked, due to the way recruitment costs worked, all that, and the way Scarbrand's campaign mechanics worked, the best thing you could do was recruit a bunch of Chaos Warriors of Khorne very quickly, make an entire stack of Chaos Warriors of Khorne, get a Blood Reaper, get a Cultist of Khorne, and if you manage it, get an Exalted Hero of Khorne, and then just win the entire campaign with that. Alongside Bloodhost. Little unit variety, lord variety, maintaining more than one army in that campaign was good luck with that. While Khorne is still focused heavily on battle and fast-paced campaigns, the diversity in these campaigns has been vastly increased. You don't generate more money through settlements, but you do generate a lot of money through battles, sacking, looting settlements, and you're no longer in the merry-go-round of raising one settlement after another. I think that the movement range you get for raising settlements has been a bit reduced, and this was prior to Omens of Destruction. Because I was doing some Scarbrand testing before Omens of Destruction. It did feel to me like he was not moving quite as much from raising one settlement to another. So CA has moved away from like 20 freaking bloodhosts. They no longer require money to maintain, but they do require skulls to recruit. And the way the units are added to bloodhosts has been changed to be affected by research. Of course, army size doesn't matter, lord effects do matter, but still. So it's less about gimmicky bullshit, and instead building proper armies with diversity in them. And the reason you get that diversity is you look at the unit recruitment. You get every hero Khorne recruitment at tier 2, hero capacity at tier 3, you get chosen at tier 3, the new Skull Reapers at tier 3, other units as well at tier 3. So you do have a greater diversity of armies, far more so than you did before. And while you no longer generate growth through bloodletting, you can still grow quite a few settlements reasonably quickly, and because of the change to settlement colonization for Khorne, or rather, or settlement destruction preventing colonization by other factions, you're no longer in that annoying situation where you raise a settlement and another faction takes it a couple of turns later. So that is a great change for Khorne as a race. And then the changes to Skull Throne that Scarbrand and Skulltaker have access to also do add for greater variety. So that makes Khorne a much better race. The new units, the Wrathmongers, Skull Reapers, Blood Beasts, so on, great additions to the roster, and we can finally use the Khorne roster. Post-patch is the first time in a Khorne campaign where I actually managed to recruit Minotaurs of Khorne and actually use them. Not in this situation, not in this army, but playing as Arbol, I was certainly able to do that multiple times. So greater diversity of units, more armies, so on and so forth. So that's great. As for Skulltaker himself, it's another teleporting campaign gimmick. So you start in Lustria, and Lustria sucks. Plainly simple. The terrain sucks, race settlements prevent you from moving from one side to another. So let's say, you know, I have an army here. Let's see if we... You know, and if I want to move this army to the other side here, I can't go for this ruined settlement, which is a pretty big deal for Khorne, considering how many settlements you ruin. I have to go around, either to the north or the south. And this happens in multiple locations. The settlement right here, yeah, it can happen. Settlement right here, can happen. Settlement right here, settlement right here, settlement right here. You get the idea. There's a lot of things broken about Lustria. That doesn't diminish Skulltaker's campaign. Another thing, in the negative about Skulltaker, is that he starts with the demonic settlement. So one of the changes they made is splitting settlements between mortal and demonic. So you do have a greater variety of unit recruitment, but mortal units and mortal settlements, well, your first settlement you always want to make mortal. The reason is, Bloodletters are a vastly inferior unit to Chaos Warriors of Khorne in terms of survivability. 110 armor versus 35 armor, given the way damage works, auto-resolve works, be it fighting battles manually or auto-resolving it, is much better to have an entire army of Chaos Warriors of Khorne. And then, even with hero recruitment, you get 2 heroes. Like, even in this campaign, yeah, you would want to get the max Blood Reapers you can early on, but after that, you want to get the Cultists, you want to get the Mortal units, Chaos Knights, all that. So it's just not worth going demonic, which is an issue for Skulltaker and Scarbrand. So Skulltaker suffers from those 2 major issues, the shit pile that Lustria is, and I do feel that the people designing these campaign mechanics are a bit divorced from the people redesigning races and also the people handling the terrain, if anyone's actually handling the terrain. Though there is a new area in Cafe, I'm pretty sure I am allowed to show it. This is the Thistle build. So we got the Cafe in Hinterland, so Hidden Landing, Gateway to Koresh, all that kind of stuff. We only got that terrain change. but nothing for Illustria to fix the issues, and you put Skulltaker in the middle of it. Then on top of that, in terms of teleporting campaign mechanics, or mechanics in general, you get a bunch of combat benefits. Experience, army abilities, movement range, all that. But because of Illustria, you're already moving less on the campaign map, and even the teleport that Skulltaker has a 5-turn cooldown. Suffice to say, both Skarbrand and especially Arbol can do a lot more faster on the campaign map, which is still what you want to do as Khorne. You have powerful early game armies, use them. If you're not fighting battles as Khorne, you'll go bankrupt. You still have to go out there and do stuff. The penalty is not necessarily as great. Units are cheaper to recruit on a local level, thankfully, normal costs. But it's still a fairly painful experience if you're not out there doing battles. You will go bankrupt, you won't be able to maintain armies. And Illustria is not conducive towards that style of gameplay. So the best thing to do as Skulltaker is get the fuck out of Illustria. Which is, by the way, another annoyance, because you can only do so if you're at war with a faction. You can only use this teleport mechanic if you're at war with a faction and you have vision on it. Here I was able to get the defensive alliance with Skarbrand. He broke it. But I was able to get the defensive alliance with him. And I was able to teleport Skulltaker over here to beat up Manfred. Because who doesn't like beating up Manfred, after all? So, while I think Skulltaker is actually awesome to use in battles, his focus on demon units, redundant. You don't want to use demon units. Okay, you don't want to use bloodletters, specifically. He gets a bunch of benefits for that. Unless you upgrade his cloak to give you the full demon reforge, and even then, would you rather reforge some units after a battle, or would you rather not lose units, any units, in a battle? Because I'll tell you, a full army of Chosen with 100 that are the same tier as Exalted Bloodletters will win battles other units freaking can't. And for the record, Arbol is much better at leading mortal armies than Skulltaker is. So that is a problem. I do appreciate being able to replenish Blood Hosts with the Cloak of Skulls. There are some nice things over here, but between Historic Position, the gimmicky teleport, I can't say I necessarily enjoy this campaign all that much. I think like Skulltaker is a legendary lord I'd rather use in an Arbol campaign, suffice to say. Like, you know, play Arbol, get the teleport to Illustria, Confederate Skulltaker, use him. You do lose the cloak, but fuck Illustria, more or less. So that would be my perspective. Great race rework, great free legendary lord, gimmick as hell, paid legendary lord. Good paid units, good lord choice. Legendary heroes, kind of whatever on Skella and Scar, really, that would be my perspective. Bloodspeaker is pretty solid to lead an army and buff it up, though. So I do certainly appreciate it. And I do also appreciate that they moved a lot of the campaign replenishment that you get from post-battle, from, like, you know, Skarbrand specific to other armies as well, other lords as well, if they get enough level through various skills. Also, research tree changes. Overall, pretty good. You would want to focus on pillars as opposed to armaments. Like, you have a Khorne army, you don't necessarily need more combat ability, but you could certainly use a minus 1 turn construction time for all buildings. I mean, it is a much better research tree than what we had before. It is a much better race. It is a much better gameplay loop for all legendary lords. There are some good addition of units that do spice things up. Like, I have been using Skull Reapers. Yes, they have less survivability, but it's nowhere near as bad as Bloodletters. So you can use Skull Reapers, you can use Wrathmongers, as opposed to just, you know, Cast Warriors and Chosen. So there is diversity of units. There is a diversity of roster that gets added in this DLC through DLC units, but not necessarily for Skulltaker. So that is kind of the downside over here in this campaign. No, in terms of a legendary lord that's supposed to go out there and do all other legendary lords, Axiala has a better campaign in that respect. Arbol has a better campaign in that respect than Skulltaker does. So I do think it's a gimmicky campaign. It is much better than what we had before, but don't think it's... Like, if you're looking to buy this DLC for the campaign, maybe not so much. If you're buying it for the units and a better Khorne experience, yeah, it will improve your Khorne experience if you buy the DLC, but for other legendary lords. Finally, we have Gorbad Ironclaw for the Greenskins. Now, with regards to the Greenskin rework, here is what CA essentially did. They changed the research tree for the Greenskins, moved some things around, made some things more useful, put all the scrap upgrades at the bottom that you can get in one turn if you have enough scrap, made it so that units can have multiple scrap upgrades at the same time. So yeah, you do have a lot more individual unit customization than you did before. Added more units, changed the tier of stuff around, made all heroes available at tier 2 in terms of recruitment, with increased capacity at tier 3 for Giant River Troll Hags, Black Orc Big Bosses, and Goblin Big Bosses, though not for non-Goblin Big Bosses or Shamans. So less Shamans than you had before, but that's fine. That's not necessarily an issue. One of the things that they did do is they made it so that Greenskins no longer get extra recruitment slots for minor settlements. You still get them for provincial capitals, but not for minor settlements. The playstyle of Greenskins pre-patch was mobilize a ton of Greenskins, specifically Goblin Archers, and go curb stomp things around the map. Goblin Archers, Nancy Skulkers, eventually Trolls, Big Guns, Trolls, all that. Black Orcs. They've reduced that. They've done it in two ways. One, they've made it so that it's costlier to construct economic buildings. So the baseline economic building cost has gone up quite a bit for the Greenskins in their campaign. So if you look at this element, it's 1,000. It used to be much cheaper. So you do need to invest more money to get more money, and you can no longer stack these with raiding stashes or raiding hideouts. You have to choose between the two of them. What do you think is worth it? So overall, the Goblin Greenskin spam early game has been nerfed, but they've made greater unit diversity available in a campaign earlier, especially with regards to orcs. So Orc Biggins are now a tier 2 unit. Black Orcs are now a tier 3 unit. You can go an entire Greenskin campaign without recruiting a single Goblin unit. Just rely on Orc Archers or Savage Orc Archers if you can get them. Trolls, and Black Orcs, Biggins, Boars, etc. in order to make it work. Squigs are probably the big winners. Beyond the new Squig Mangler unit, the Night Goblin Big Boss does give you a bunch of benefits for Squig units, Squig Herds, Squig Hoppers, Mangler Squigs as well. So you can make like really powerful stacks of those guys, work very, very well. Various benefits, changes to heroes, to lords. Orc War Bosses are now worth recruiting. Savage Orc Shamans do give you physical resistance for all Orc infantry units and provide you casting abilities. So you may have fewer Shamans, but you now have a caster lord that's absolutely worth recruiting in a campaign. So it's no longer a case of, oh, I'm just going to get the Goblin Great Shaman because of Goblin Tide, then just use those and war bosses that are not really worth recruiting. Not Goblin War Bosses, a bit more worth it because of the Squig benefits, because Squigs are certainly more viable, but yeah, still. I mean, you can still get the plan. I mean, that's just for Gorbad specifically. So, you have fewer armies, a weaker economy early on. You're still playing a very strong race with the Greenskins. Furthermore, Skarsnik and Warzak have both gotten campaign updates that, like, I do think both Warzak and Skarsnik do have better campaigns. For Skarsnik, it's the fact that he can recruit orcs from any settlement as long as he has Caracade Peaks. For Warzak, well, let's just say that having the Savage Orc Shaman with all the benefits and him also getting a skill line update does certainly improve his campaign potential. So I think both campaigns do benefit quite a bit from either the rework or the DLC or both. You get a new artillery unit, and it's kind of funny to think about the idea of like, oh, I'm going to get bolt throw. We wouldn't get bolt throwers in a dwarf campaign, we're going to get it in a greenskin campaign. That is freaking hilarious. The bolt thrower is so trash for the dwarves that the greenskins are using it. I'm laughing my ass off at the notion of that. So the greenskin rework, nerfs, sure. Were they deserved? Yes. Are all the changes bad? No, there's actually plenty of good changes as well. More unit variety, easier access to certain units, more hero variety, better lord variety, better lords. Not everything has changed, so goblin big bosses are still pretty trash. I mean, you still kind of want them in their hero, they give you scavenge, but no special skill line on them. No changes as far as I can tell with Night Goblin war bosses, but hey, squigs are more viable, so maybe they're counting on that. You don't need to recruit nasty skulkers anymore. I mean, big guns are a more viable unit from a long-term perspective. Early game, yeah, nasty skulkers are a better unit. Long-term, big guns do better. Simple as that. Upgrade-wise, survivability-wise, auto-resolve-wise, you name it. They just do better in that respect. So that's with the Greenskin rework. I'm sure some people are going to be pissed off. I'm mostly fine with it. I do feel that they perhaps went a bit too much in one direction. I understand the desire for nerfs. I kind of would have wished they would have changed some things about the WoW mechanic. But they actually now force you to choose between rewards with the WoW mechanics. Like, oh, what WoW mobs are you going to get in a campaign at the end of a WoW, or are you going to get scrap and gold? That's not particularly great from my point of view. So I think that some changes could have been warranted over there. Because here's the thing. You're still going to want to play a hyper-aggressive style with Greenskins. That hasn't changed. Nerfing them just makes them more annoying. That's kind of the big problem. I do appreciate the greater unit diversity. I don't necessarily appreciate having to pay more for the same economy that I had before, or even a long-term economy being nerfed, though I understand it. As I said, I'm fine with it, not necessarily happy about it. As for Gorbad, yeah, this campaign is not particularly great. Okay, I'm lying. So when I say that, the starting position actually is quite a bit interesting, because you can't get Karakay peaks after turn 1. You have a whole situation. How do you deal with Queek? How do you deal with the Greenskins over here in the west? How do you deal with Forgrim and all that? So the actual campaign position is interesting, especially because you have the position, the objective to take control of the Badlands, but at the same time you also have things to deal with over here in the north. So you have that kind of dynamic to deal with in this campaign. That's good. That's not my problem. A campaign can be made or broken by starting position alone. Skulldigger certainly has problems because of his fucking Illustrian start. But, and I do stress it out, the whole plan mechanic, I understand pushing for unit diversity, but it's such a fucking gimmicky system. Like, oh, if you use these units in your army, you get certain benefits. Except, here's the problem with all that variety you want us to use in these armies to make the plan work. It doesn't fucking work, CA. Do you know why it doesn't work? Like, let's consider some of the things I have access to. Oh, I can get the 5% upkeep benefit for Orc Boys and Orc Boar Boys if I have 2 of them in my army. Why the hell would I have 2 Orc Boys in my army? And not even Spear Boys either. Oh, you can get some ammunition benefit if you have... There's some stuff you will get, but then there's stuff that's absolutely gimmicky in this. And if you transfer units from one army to another, you actually end up losing these benefits as well. Which is also not especially great. Like, I'll be honest, I've tried playing this campaign multiple times. And what's annoying here, beyond the fact that it's gimmicky, is also the fact that it's constant fucking micromanagement, because it's not just one army or faction-wide, it's every army has these temporary effects, and you have to worry about, like, ooh, how can I apply them? How can I get to the effects that I want? How can I unlock effects? By the time that I unlock some of these freaking effects, the campaign is over. This is the great Greenskin strategist? I mean, seriously, in some ways, I feel like I'm playing a generic lord over here. Partly because, why the hell would you want to raise a settlement as Greenskins to begin with? When you want to sack, you get a lot more money from that. Oh, I get more rewards for a WoW. Great. I mean, by the time I complete even my first WoW, my campaign is kind of over. And how many WoWs are going to complete in campaign? Not that many. The global recruitment duration benefit hasn't worked for me this entire time. And even if it did, okay, great, I get the global duration benefit. Grom is right here, you know. He's just sitting here. you can get that same fucking benefit too. So point is, it's just not really a great system in a lot of ways. Besides, the units that you actually want to recruit globally, the ones you can't get access to easy, you wouldn't want to recruit globally because they already require multiple turns, like Stone Trolls, Black Orcs, Manglers, Mangler Squigs, all that, they all already require multiple turns. If you want to recruit more units, just get the boss tent for local recruitment capacity and upgrade it even further. You will get 2 of them and Carrick 8 peaks even when you do get it. I actually deleted one of them because I couldn't afford to make use of it. So that is the dynamic that Gorbat has to deal with. Like, he's not a bad legendary lord in combat. He has some nice abilities. He has a nice skill line, but his unique mechanic is trash. Like, just pure fucking trash. It's trying to enforce a variety of units, and that would be great, but you know who does it well? Malachi fucking does it well. Do you know why Malachi does it well? First off, because you don't have to make it, because it's a faction-wide benefit for all those units. You do an objective, you unlock it, you use it for the rest of the campaign. And given the way campaigns are paced, like, I really feel some of the people that were making these ideas for campaigns and the people who implemented it are not cognizant of the fact that campaigns in Warhammer free. Like, how many people play campaigns that last over 50 turns? Right? The thing about Malachi, you can get access to pretty much all of that stuff by the time the campaign is over. It feels like an actual progression, whereas with Gorbat, it's like, oh yeah, I can get, like, if I unlock a research over here, I get a spider benefit. Do I want to use freaking spiders? Or, ooh, I can get income from sacking and looting settlements plus 25% for one army if I have freaking wolf riders in that army and I raid for a certain amount. Do I want to raid as freaking Greenskins? I mean, if you're playing Greenskins, do you know how many times I raid? Like, I have to go out of my way to raid a province to make it worth it. Like, if you're forcing... This is the thing that annoys the shit out of me about it. It's forcing me as a player to unlock these things, to go out of my way to do it, not something that would naturally come to me. That's the difference. If you're playing Malachi's campaign, which I still think it's probably the best campaign in the game. The thing about Malachi's objectives and units and all that, it happens freaking naturally. Like, oh, I'm playing early on, maybe I want cannons or gyrocopters. That's a perfect viable early game choice. You can get both. And you get a couple of those units for free. And it affects your entire faction, so you can recruit other armies that benefit from that, and you have actual unit diversity in all of your armies. And you don't need to do it to complete those objectives either, by the way, or have those benefits. That's the great thing about Malachi's campaign. And you have these objectives around these areas. Sure, some of them you may have to go out of your way to complete them, but you do that once in a campaign, it's over. With Gorbat, it's a constant fucking micromanagement of systems for the entire campaign. It is utter crap of a campaign idea. Like, we gotta talk about the fact that CAA, like, this is the thing that annoys me, and CAA has done this before, right? Where they create systems that I'm sure to them sounded like great ideas, but they're done in such an isolated mindset that they're not thinking, okay, most people on all skill levels, like, I'm sure they have the statistics. I'm sure they have this data. But it doesn't feel to me that they're using actual data. How long are most campaigns? How long does the question they should ask themselves, with every single idea, with every change that they make, with everything that they add, with every unique thing that they add, the primary question they should ask themselves is like, what is the duration of actual campaigns? On average, not what some people on Reddit or Discord saying, oh, I play a 100-turn campaign. Most people don't. So what is the point? What's the cutoff point? What is the highest activity level for players in a campaign? Not how many people finish like a 100 turns campaign. No. What is the average campaign duration that people reach to? What is the average how many turns do people do in a single session of the game? Those kind of things. Because it feels like they're divorced from the reality of that when they're designing these things. That's my issue with Gorbat. It's not as big of a problem for Skulltaker, nowhere near as big of a problem for Golfag. In fact, Golfag could have used it more of like, you know, a progressive chain of objectives in his campaign for contracts. Like you do a contract for Carl, then you get a follow-up and all that. That could have been great. For Gorbad, it's like a grind to unlock stuff that is meaningless. Because, oh, I get money and combat benefits. I'm freaking Greenskins! You think I need money? Like, okay, I could use more early game money, but long term, I don't need fucking money as Greenskins. And combat boosts, again, I'm freaking Greenskins, and you just unlocked Black Orcs at tier 3. Do you think I need freaking power in combat? Like, that's been so redundant. Everything about his entire system of campaign is so freaking redundant. There's some good stuff, some stuff that you would actually use, but very, very little. Most of the stuff is fluff. And that's my issue. It's not a bad campaign, it's not a bad Legendary Lord, it's a bad mechanic. Horribly balanced, not based on the actual reality of how people play this game. Because most people play campaigns that go up to max 80 turns. But those campaigns, the vast majority of them are probably done by like turn 50, 30 to 50. For me, most campaigns are done by turn 30, I know. Other people play more slowly, but for the vast majority of player base, pushing it to 80 is already pushing it a lot. And yet you have objectives that, yeah, that's kind of the problem. And the worst part is, I'm sure the people handling the reworks are like, okay, people play campaigns, they want greater unit diversity, they want to have access to these units as quickly as possible because they want to actually use them. Let's make it so. But the people designing these mechanics, clearly, to me, it seems that they don't understand that. So there's a huge disconnect on that level, from my point of view. I mean, you see the difference between... Hell, I'm sure that the people who designed Arbol... Like, it wouldn't surprise me if the people who designed Arbol's entire campaign and his mechanic were aware of these things. Because he's the free lord. Maybe it was different people that worked on the brand new ideas. Guess what? Arbol has a better campaign than Skulltaker because he actually meshes far better with the game meta and the terrain and the Khorne playstyle than Skulltaker does. In conclusion, and just to mention this about Arbol the Undefeated, he has a pretty good campaign with constant objectives, constant challenging enemies to deal with, and you can make them even more challenging with like honor before reason effect or the blood shall spill effect. So you can have some fairly interesting fights over here. You have both rogue armies being spawned to deal with, and also legendary lords that are put as actual objectives for you to deal with, including Daniel. Got a feel for Daniel over there. So that's good. And whoever does, and I think Arbol is the clear winner of the DLC Legendary Lords, though he is available for free, so that's something. When you consider like Champions of Chaos came out with a bunch of Legendary Lords, and the best one ended up being Be'lakor. Anyway, regardless of that, regardless of that aspect, how would I rate it? Well, I think all the racial reworks are absolutely an S tier plus. Even the Greenskin one, it's certainly an S tier situation, or at least A plus for Greenskins. Even though they nerfed some things, maybe they went a bit too far, but it is an improvement, like hero capacity and variety, making an orc playstyle actually viable. Yeah, the new units, new lords, new regiments run S tier as well. So great job with respect to all of that. But as for the campaigns, well, let me put it like this. For the Ogre portion of the DLC, I think that between the Ogre rework and what this DLC has to offer is certainly worth buying. So I would say the Ogre stuff, even though Goldfag could have used a more interesting campaign or more interesting contracts and the bounties are redundant for him, I do think Goldfag is at least an A-tier campaign. You could even argue S tier minus, whatever. It is a good campaign. It is good and interesting legendary lords, like good effects, all that. Nice playstyle. Ogres are much better to play. The additions in the DLC are worth it. So if you're looking to play Ogres, you didn't get them before, you had no intention of getting them before because they were pretty crap, then I think it wouldn't be bad to just buy this DLC to play Goldfag. I'm not sure if you could confederate Greases and Scrag if you don't own the DLC for the confederation mechanic they have. Maybe, maybe not. But there's reasons to buy both the Ogre Race Pack and the Ogre DLC. So A tier for that. For Khorne, It's an interesting one. I don't think Skulltaker's campaign is that interesting. I do, however, appreciate Arbel's campaign. I do appreciate the new units, Regiment's Renown, the new lore choice, Legendary Heroes, whatever. But A tier minus, A minus, B plus, I would say for Khorne. And then Greenskins, B, really. Like, there's some good stuff, there's some fun stuff, but yeah, Gorbat's campaign is a gimmicky one. It is a good DLC. It isn't as good as Thrones of Decay, but it is a good DLC. Whether or not you think the new campaigns are worth playing, that's up to you. For my part, with regards to Khorne, I've enjoyed Arbel a lot more than Skulltaker. With regards to Greenskins, I do enjoy Gorbat's campaign, but I couldn't care less about his unique mechanic. So whatever on that. In Ogres, I have enjoyed both Greases and Golfag. And I haven't really played that much of Scrag, but I did play quite a bit of Greases, multiple campaigns, Golfag. It was a lot better for the existing... I mean, I did play one Scrag campaign, to be clear. But yeah, I do think Ogres are the clear winners here. I also think Khorne as a race is the clear winner, but not necessarily Skulltaker. Greenskins, you could consider the losers. Again, it's less Goblin Archer spam, which did get tedious and boring. Don't get me wrong. Nasty Skulker Archer spam was getting pretty dull. So there is greater variety. But yeah, could have been handled better, I think. Kosin Sanyat. Let me know what you guys think about all of this. Which race do you think is worth playing? Which ones you don't think it's worth playing? Like, I think the best campaigns for Ogres, it's an interesting one. Which one is the best campaign? Because they do have different playstyles. Maybe Golfang, just more mobility. Though Greases can buy Zarnagrund, so there is that aspect, if you want to. There's a lot of trolling involved in both Greases and Golfang. Maybe that's why I like them more than Scrag, because Scrag doesn't have the trolling potential of Greases. When both Golfang and Greases are better trolls than the Changeling, it's saying a lot how bad Shadows of Change was as a DLC. That's all I had to say. Kosin signing out.